Thank you for everyone who hung around and is listening today. I took 2 weeks off because my editor, Holly, is in college. I'm sorry. Holly's in college, and she had finals, and then after finals went out and partied. And I didn't want to not let her do that and have to edit my podcast while she was in Vegas. So, tough shit. I know a bunch of stuff went down. I've got a guest this week, and we're going to talk about fantasy football and the draft's implications on all of that. So, stick around, and we'll jump right into that. Two friends recording a football podcast, all right, Zach?
Two friends with a lot of qualifications.
With a lot of two winners of fantasy leagues last year, and not just any fantasy leagues.
A fantasy league with a $20
fantasy
buy-in.
leagues, individual fantasy leagues. Okay, all right. So, I guess we're gonna do our live reaction, not live reactions, but our reactions to the NFL draft and how it impacts the fantasy sort of standings and how it impacts how we value certain players. And you sent me your spreadsheet, so I guess I'll reference it immediately because you have your draft reactions tab.
Yep.
And
COVID's a boring time.
Yeah, COVID's a great time for making draft reaction spreadsheets. The first thing that you point out that I think is a great point to point out is that DeAndre Swift gets Penny Sewell, and they don't do anything to address the fact that they don't have a single wide receiver worth talking about.
None. Who did they get? They got some rookie receiver, didn't they?
I'm sure they drafted one, but the fact that I can't just rip his name off the top of my head.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, they got Amon-Ra St. Brown from USC. But they took him in the fourth round, so not a big.
So they have a rookie wide receiver they took in the fourth round.
Yep.
And their only offensive threat is DeAndre Swift, who for some reason is in, let's see, I highlighted him because I was looking at ESPN's rankings for everyone right now, and they did like the top 25 and like top 50 for some positions, and they have DeAndre Swift at 12.
Yeah. People love DeAndre Swift right now.
And I think that he should be more towards like 5 or 6. I mean, just because I had him on my team last year, and when he was healthy, it was nothing but production. And that's when they had Stafford and Golladay. And when you team him with a guy like Goff, who doesn't have a very big arm, who is prone to handing the ball off, you're just going to see big numbers. And they got a free offensive lineman. They didn't have to do anything to get Sewell.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that you saw DeAndre Swift's production just increase throughout the season as they started to trust him, as he started to really come into that role. And so I think that he's going to just come right off the bat, high production and really high usage. And I think he is one of the more like sure thing candidates for high usage.
Yeah, and when you look at drafting running backs, you either look at team scheme, like the Steelers, who have announced, we're a single team back. We like to have a horse there that we give the ball to every time. Or you look to teams that are handcuffed into, well, this guy's going to carry the ball every down for us. Be it Green Bay, who loses Jamal Williams, be it Detroit, because they have no one but DeAndre Swift to do anything on the offensive end. And the Colts got handcuffed into it due to injury last year, which is why Jonathan Taylor had such a big year. So when I'm looking at who I'm going to draft at running back, especially as you fall out of the top 3, the Kamara, McCaffreys, and Derrick Henrys of the world, when you fall out of that portion of the draft, it's like, okay, well, who are the guys who are going to be touching the ball every single down or having a look at it? And DeAndre Swift's like the number one guy.
People do have a fear, though, that because the Lions picked up Jamal Williams, that's going to kind of threaten he might not necessarily be a 3-down back, that they might start using Jamal Williams more often.
He feels like the definition of like the scat back, like okay, on third down, this guy's going to run a screen for us. But yeah, he might take like 5 carries away from him a game, but I don't think it's enough to. Is it enough for me to be scared of DeAndre Swift's numbers taking a huge dip? No, because Aaron Jones was like the 3rd best running back in fantasy last year.
Yeah. I do think one other risk with DeAndre Swift is that they are not going to be a high production offense. So his like touchdown upside seems like it's going to be fairly low.
Right. So the negative to taking him is, oh, wow, this team's probably going to be playing from behind every game.
Yeah.
How is that going to look as far as getting a guy like Swift the football?
Maybe that means we take another look at Amon-Ra St. Brown. Maybe we love him.
Yeah, you like him, huh?
I do like him. I back the pack.
Yeah, you're the biggest proponent of backing the pack.
Big Pac-12 guy.
And we talked earlier a little bit, but the effect that you think Herbert's going to have as a serviceable quarterback this year is something that's interesting, right? Because they shore up the offensive line a little bit. There are weapons in Los Angeles, and I think the running game's going to stabilize a lot more around Eckler than they've had it in the past.
Absolutely.
Which could make Herbert a serious threat throwing the football.
And also Austin Eckler, when he was playing last season, he had like PPR like 16.6 points per game. So he was killing it. And I think that he's going to be...
That's a high PPR, especially for a rookie quarterback. Especially for a guy like Eckler, who is a second down guy behind, weren't they running,
they had
that guy's name?
At the beginning of the season, it was a little unsure, and it looked like they had like Justin Kelly, some other.
They had like a couple of these other backs that they had scattered in their lineup, and then it just was like, why aren't we giving the ball to Eckler every down?
Oh, it was Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly. That's who it was.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. It's like, but that there won't be that hiccup this year with him, where it's just, okay, for the first time in his career, it's him. Melvin Gordon's out of the picture, and he's the guy.
Yeah.
He's the guy.
Absolutely. So I think there are a couple people who I think just clearly their value has skyrocketed since the draft. So you got, first of all, of course, like the rookie running backs. Najee Harris, I think, is going to do great. I also just love him. He's my favorite person ever. I think he's going to kill it. I want him to be like, Saquon Barkley.
I mean, I obviously, for my own selfish reasons, want him to score 40 touchdowns for the Steelers this year and just rush for over 3,000 yards.
I mean, I think that's going to happen.
I mean, I really think that he could score a bunch of touchdowns this year. As long as these Steelers offensive linemen pan out, because their O-line was terrible on the run last year.
Yeah, but they made some additions. And I don't think that once again, I think that he will have enough opportunity that those lapses in the offensive line are not going to, totally just like plummet his value.
Right. And he offers enough outside of just lining up next to Ben Roethlisberger. Like, you can put this guy in the slot. He can receive the football. So he offers just a little bit more than James Conner offered, obviously. And if he can stay healthy, I think he's going to be great. Yeah,
I for sure view him as in like somewhere in like the upper half of starting running backs coming into next season. And that's a hot take, but I'll stand by it.
No, I think if you get him in the 3rd, 4th round, that's even 5th round, that's high value.
Absolutely.
And that's what you're looking for. I mean, that's where drafts are won. Who did you take number 1 overall last year?
I was the 2nd pick, and I took good old Saquon Barkley, and that was perfect.
Yeah.
And then my next pick, I picked Joe Mixon, and that was also wonderful.
Yeah, in the 1st round, I took Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I mean, I think it just goes to show that you're not going to win your draft in the 1st round. You're going to win your league in the 1st round. You win your league in rounds 3 through 8. where you're, paying attention to guys' values and their, usage percentage essentially, for where they're going. And I think you're right. Najee Harris is just going to get a ton of usage. He's going to have a ton of value, and he's not going to be drafted anywhere near the top because the Steelers' running game was so bad last year.
Absolutely. But
so it's a bit of a risk.
I love him. And also, I think that fantasy is fun because sometimes you pick players just so you watch them. Like, honestly, last year, I just wanted to watch more Bills games. I wanted to have more reasons to do it. And that was like at least 50% of the reason that I picked Josh Allen.
Right. And then he ended up being...
And that went great. And if it hadn't
the most
gone great,
fun quarterback
I still would have liked
it. Right. Another guy that pops off on the list to me that you made is you love David Montgomery for the purpose of them getting Justin Fields.
Yes. And I'm interested to see how Tariq Cohen is going to impact that because he's coming back from his injury. He's going to take some carries away. But I just think that we'll see what they do at the quarterback, because Matt Nagy recently said that he's a little reticent to start Justin Fields right away. And who knows if that's true or not, or, how long that'll last. But I do think that when Justin Fields comes in, I think that just, the value for all of the skill players in Chicago go way up. And even like Allen Robinson, I think could be like a top 10 receiver. I think Darnell Mooney could even become like a good flex option sometimes.
Well, and like I envision this a lot like I envision the situation in Los Angeles with the Chargers last year, right? Where it's like, well, we're not going to start Herbert. And then, Herbert ends up being forced to start, and immediately T.Y. Hilton's numbers go up. Mm-hmm. Immediately the running back numbers go up. Immediately all the skill positions start becoming a value. Because earlier in the year, T.Y. Hilton has like no reception, or not T.Y. Hilton. Sorry, I'm thinking of
what's his name?
You have there.
I know who you're talking about.
Oh my God, it might as well be T.Y. Hilton. That's the frustrating thing.
Oh, Keenan Allen, their top one.
Keenan Allen, yeah. Keenan Allen has like 0 targets from Tyrod Taylor like all year, and everyone's like, Keenan Allen, what a bust pick. And then the next thing you know, this guy's just like, I'm going to throw the ball 13 times to Keenan Allen a game because he's the best receiver on my team. And Fields is going to do the same thing. Rookie quarterback, not in the most complex offensive system on planet Earth, but, certainly they're going to want to open up the playbook with his arm, and he's just going to default to his best receiver and his best running back. And I really think that you're right. David Montgomery benefits from this, even though they have so many running backs. I just think at the end of the day, Montgomery's going to be their guy.
And the thing is, like, I don't think that Tariq Cohen is going to take enough away from David Montgomery that he's going to just fall precipitously. And I think that people are valuing him like that. I think that his value is slipping. People view him as like the 20th to 30th best running back in the draft.
Yeah, he's 21 on ESPN's list, which is ridiculous because it's like this guy was an every down back last year. He was great for a team that had 0 offensive, flavor, and now potentially are going to have a ton of offensive flavor with a quarterback who, mind you, can run the ball, so it opens up different lanes for him to run the ball. Mm-hmm. If they do some of that zone read stuff. So I just think, while you're right, Tariq Cohen's coming back, and it's something to look at. It reminds me a lot of the Jamal Williams situation.
Mm-hmm.
But the situation's a little better because the Bears could be playing with leads. They have a really good defense, and if they're trying to bleed clock, they're going to be handing the ball to Montgomery. So,
But yeah, it's Dave Montgomery, 15.9 half PPR points per game last season. He was RB4. Like, why is he falling to like the 8th round of drafts? Like, what are you doing?
Well, it's like the Aaron Jones stuff where it's like Aaron Jones every year top 3 running back, and they're like, yeah, well, this is the year where he's not gonna be.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, I don't give a fuck what you tell me. I'm gonna take Aaron
Seriously.
Jones because the guy's really good at football.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think one really interesting thing post-draft, getting back to some of these mix-ups, Travis Etienne
Yeah.
and James Robinson.
Yeah.
Does it look like... First of all, I heard a funny thing, which is that Urban Meyer, basically like all of his draft picks were like former 5-star prospects out of high school. And everyone's like, college coach. Like,
right.
So I think he's gonna be interesting and a little unpredictable. But I do wonder if Travis Etienne is going to see the same production that James Robinson saw last year. Does he really take over the role?
Do they try to RB1? Do like...
People think that like you don't draft a running back that high, and history has kind of borne this out, that you don't draft a running back that high to not start for you.
Yeah, and also Urban Meyer's got, and always has in his coaching career, his own plan. Right? Mm-hmm. He's got his own way of doing things. And James Robinson, for all that he was so great last year, and for all that he will be good for some other team that picks him up because he's going to be pissed, is just not a guy that fits the mold of a team that's probably going to be running 80% of their plays out of the shotgun. You know, like ETN is a guy that did that in college. I mean, and I get the reunion thing, and that's cute. But like at the end of the day, James Robinson isn't a back that necessarily fits that. Okay, we're gonna run out of the shotgun. We're not gonna turn around and hand the ball off to this guy every down. So, I mean, absolutely. Obviously Travis Wilson's a stud. So, yeah, I have faith in Urban Meyer. Oddly, have faith that he's gonna figure this out. They already have receiving weapons, and I think that ETN, you're right. Is he going to take the production? Maybe not at first, but we're going to get into week 8, and Travis Etienne is going to be the clear number 1 guy there.
Absolutely. And I think that especially if you're looking at like, how do you win your league? Like, yeah, you know, you got to get into the playoffs, of course. But once you're there, a player like Travis Etienne can do a lot to really help you out. Like with Jonathan Taylor last year. He was really underwhelming for a big portion of the season, and then they went up against
exploded.
like 6 of like the worst run defenses in the league right in a row, just as they were starting to give him all the touches and just kind of say, screw you, Naheem Hines, even though he still would have like 25-point games now and then. But I could see Travis Etienne having a similar season trajectory as Jonathan Taylor last year.
Yeah. And not to mention, like, that conference is bad. Houston is going to be really bad. They're going to be really bad because they might not even have a quarterback. And Tennessee had one of the worst defenses in the NFL last year, and from what I've seen, it doesn't look like they did anything to address that. Mm-hmm. So there's high potential that, 4 out of these, 6 conference games that they play a year, ETN could have huge numbers, and who knows what they're going to do to try to, while giving Travis Wilson experience, or Travis Wilson, is that the old Ute quarterback? Yep. Yeah. While giving Trevor Lawrence as much exposure as they can, they're also going to try to limit the amount of, hits he takes, and I think they're going to give ETN a lot of those hits by handing the ball off. Mm-hmm. Yeah, learn from the Joe Burrow mistake.
Yeah. I hadn't really considered this till now, but honestly, I probably am undervaluing ETN, and I bet that a lot of people are too.
Yeah, I kind of, coming into this conversation, I was like, ETN, are you fucking kidding me?
He's fine. I'd take him
Robinson
if he's there,
was so good. Yeah, but like you said, he's a good guy to let kind of rest on your bench for a while and just see what happens as the season progresses. There's always guys that you get onto your roster and you just keep holding on to them because you hope that X, Y, or Z is going to happen. And then sometimes it does, like Jonathan Taylor last year. And sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay.
Or DeAndre Swift.
Right. I held on to DeAndre Swift all year. And it worked out.
Dropped him after week 2. And that was a bad move.
And that's a mistake. That's okay.
But hey, I didn't know anything about fantasy back then.
You have the Arizona Cardinals, who are just in what seems like maybe running back hell, or is Chase Edmonds good?
No idea, but I love the idea of holding on to him. I think it'll be just interesting. They could be like whoever they go with, Chase Edmonds or James Conner. From what I've heard, it kind of seems like they're leaning James Conner, but they could be a pretty undervalued pick.
Duo. Yeah, both of them could. I mean, the frustration for James Conner for me comes from just watching him play for the Pittsburgh Steelers for the past couple of years, where he has huge games and then he has no-show games. But that offense is rather loaded outside of the running back position, which just leaves a lot of opportunity. And they also just love to run 4 verts. So it leaves the opportunity for a lot of like sneaky running back draws, sneaky running back touchdowns. I mean, granted, the problem there is Kyler Murray's going to take maybe 6 or 7 or 8 of the carries that you'd regularly give to a running back for himself.
Yeah, that's true. But they could just be like a really high-scoring offense like the Cowboys, where, sure, they have DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, Rondale Moore, and Christian Kirk, so they're going to be pretty loaded at wide receiver. But that doesn't necessarily hurt like Ezekiel Elliott's potential. And of course, Dak Prescott doesn't run quite as much as Kyler Murray, but he's not, just some like pure pocket passer.
No. And I mean, the funny thing is the Cardinals put together the all 2013 pro team for their lineup, going and getting JJ Watt and AJ Green. But I mean, it's true. AJ Green's a big receiver who still has gas in the tank. I think the Cincinnati stuff was just more about him being sick and tired of playing in Cincinnati than it was about him not having gas in the tank.
Yeah. So I should be clear, I don't love them as like top RB candidates or anything, but I do love them relative to where everyone else is valuing them. And I don't.
Yeah, I mean, where do you think they'd be a good value pick? Around 5, 5th round, somewhere like that, or that seems early for me for them.
Yeah, I think I would kind of, I think 6 or 7. Maybe if they basically the later the rounds get, if they're still available, their value increases like any good player. But I do think that a lot of people would shy away from drafting them, but I think you should just kind of look into some like local media before the season, figure out who their lead back seems like it's going to be. And I think that the drafting one of those too in a late round could be really helpful for your team.
Could be great. Yeah. Just especially for you get into week 6 of the season, there's 3 injuries and your guy's on a bye week, and you're going to start one of these guys, and maybe he's not going to score 22 points, but at least he'll get you 10 to 12, which gets you out of the week without negative production, where you're picking somebody up off of the waiver wire and praying.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then you've got Allen Robinson on the same reason. We've kind of we've touched on that.
And he killed it last year. I think he's going to be.
I mean, he's going to be insane.
A great wide receiver. My 2. Yeah. A few value targets that I have just at wide receiver are, I mean, of course, I think Allen Robinson and AJ Brown. Of course, those are going to be some of the top 10 receivers.
The guys.
But I think AJ Brown could be a top 3 wide receiver next year.
I mean, I think oddly enough, we're going into this weird phase where there's an odd amount of depth at running back for what we're used to, right? J.K. Dobbins is going to be huge this year, and no one's talking about him because, Lamar Jackson runs the ball a lot and they still have Gus Edwards, but J.K. Dobbins started becoming the clear number 1 back for Baltimore late in the season last year, and I had a hard time keeping him on my bench. He's dropping like 20 points a game. Eventually I had to start him. And he's just a good player. And I think that he's another one of those guys where it's like, if there's good running back depth and you're sitting there and you're like, man, I only have one wide receiver, or no, I only have one running back. I got two wide receivers, but Allen Robinson or one of these other guys is still on the board. You have to take Allen Robinson.
Absolutely.
And not because there's no running back, the running back drop off is so great, but just because I think there's a lot of guys at running back, once you get out of the top 5 or 6 of them, that are pretty much equal.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, look at J.K. Dobbins' like game log from last year. Pretty wild. He started out first game of the season, 14.2, and then just went through this big stretch of just like 7 duds, and a ton of people gave up on him. But toward the end of the season, it's like basically like near 20 points per game, virtually every game.
Yeah. So it like he had like the typical up and down, second running back on a rookie contract or as a rookie in the NFL. And, Mark Ingram's gone. So he's going to be the clear one, and he can catch the ball. And I think Baltimore at this point has to add the wrinkle into their game that includes throwing the football more. Mm-hmm. And that might lead to Lamar Jackson throwing the football to a running back. And I think that running back is going to be J.K. Dobbins. Mm-hmm. So you're going to get a lot of value out of him.
Yeah. But that also makes...
At some point, they have to open up that part of their playbook.
Yeah, and I think they're going to try next season. I think that, a lot of people were disappointed to see Rashad Bateman go to the Ravens. But,
right.
I mean, and I'm not going to draft him. I'm not going to draft any Ravens wide receivers next year. But no. I wouldn't be that surprised if I ended up regretting that.
No, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if I ended up regretting not taking a Ravens receiver or tight end. I mean, if Mark Andrews is sitting there in front of me, I'm still not going to take him. Just because I don't want to deal with the headache of having to watch a Ravens game and go, oh, for fuck's sake, will you throw it to Mark Andrews? And them not throw it. It's just, I'll take Eric Ebron, where I know at least I'm going to get 6 drops a year, but fuck, I don't have to stress about thinking he's a number one guy when he's not.
6 drops a game.
Oh my God. Ebron killed me last year.
Yeah.
Horrific.
Just a tragedy.
What do you make of the Bengals receivers?
I don't know. I really do think it seems like Jamar Chase is going to emerge pretty early on as their top receiver.
Right.
And I think that he has that connection with Joe Burrow. He's such an insane talent. I think that he is going to be a really good receiver. And then I think that that their other options, I'm not going to trust them, and I'm not going to draft them unless it's the very end of the draft and no one else has touched them. But I just kind of think Tyler Boyd. Yeah,
because I need you to talk me off the Tyler Boyd ledge. You got to talk me off the Tyler Boyd ledge because I'm in, man. Tyler Boyd has had back-to-back 100 reception seasons. He's been awesome. He's a possession guy. He lines up in the slot. I don't see how adding an outside threat takes away from his production, but at the same time, is Joe Burrow just going to throw the ball 14 times a game to his guy?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I kind of could see it happening. I just don't know. I feel like they all kind of neutralize each other. So they all even though I do think Jamar Chase is going to emerge as their top option, I think that Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins are going to take away from him. And I think I think they're going to be a lot like Dallas last year with Jamar Chase kind of filling in that Amari Cooper role, being a fairly consistent, good receiver. You're going to start him pretty much every week. And then Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins in CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup. See, I saw it as the relationship that I saw it was as a poor man Seattle Seahawks,
where you have this giant,
Oh,
absolute freak athlete like DK Metcalf, and then you have the inside guy like Tyler Lockett, where Lockett had, there was a point in that season where it was like, oh, even if you have both of those guys on your team, just start them both because they're going to have monster numbers. And then Lockett clearly starts tailing off around like week 12, 13.
mm-hmm.
And maybe that's where the Tyler Boyd thing goes with him next to him. Again, I don't think that the numbers are going to be as good because Joe Burrow is not Russell Wilson and Zach Taylor is not Pete Carroll.
Mm-hmm.
But they have that potential to me more than I think I see it as like a Michael Gallup thing where,
yeah,
Dak Prescott goes down and all those guys' numbers just kind of suck except for Amari Cooper.
Maybe their like best comparison then would be, this is funny, we're just doing a series of comparisons, but like the Steelers last year, like Juju, Claypool, and Deontay Johnson, where they all have like pretty serviceable production. The more I think about it, the more I'm getting convinced that, they're all really talented receivers, and it seems like they're going to, they probably will throw the ball.
All contribute in their own way.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is, I think if you're a fantasy, you're managing your fantasy team and you're looking at it, and you're like, man, I've got Tyler Boyd, who I really like, who has weeks where he has 10 receptions for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then he has weeks where Joe Burrow doesn't throw to him and he throws to the other 2 guys. And you've got a guy like, on your bench that's like that, like a Michael Gallup or a Chase Claypool, and you're juggling between these 3 receivers who are inconsistent to play your wide receiver 2 or flex position. You want to avoid that as much as possible as a fantasy owner. You want your starters to be guys that you can rely on every week. And it gets hard, and I know it gets hard, but that is like a draft strategy that I firmly believe in, is not juggling talent. And if you are looking at Tyler Boyd and you feel like you already have one juggle talent guy, you don't want to get another, then maybe don't get him. But if he wants to be the guy that you're rolling the dice on a little bit week to week, he might be the perfect option.
Yeah, I think the Bengals receivers are another situation where I would draft Jamar Chase, but I'm probably going to stay away from Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, and I bet that I'll regret that. And I'm fine.
And at the end of the day, I'm okay with it because there's a lot of receiving talent. I went through ESPN's thing, and you're gonna love this because it's a Utah reference, and we're gonna back the pack as much as we can. But they don't even have Tim Patrick on their rankings, and Tim Patrick's like this guy who was the clear number 1 receiver in Denver. I don't care if you think it was Jerry Jeudy; it was Tim Patrick, and
absolutely
they might get Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen.
So. I don't think it's going to happen, but the quarterback situation has to improve there. Drew Lock sucks.
Yeah.
And so, and if he's the guy, he loved throwing to Tim Patrick. So what am I missing? Are you going to take Tim Patrick if he's there in the 10th round?
I don't think so, because I don't think that anyone else will. I think he's going to be a waiver wire player. I think people are going to go for Cortland Sutton. And then they're going to kind of ignore Tim Patrick, and he's going to be sitting available, not on a team for the whole season. That's kind of my prediction.
And I think if you get into week 2 or 3 and you're like, oh my God, Tim Patrick, 100 yards in week 2 and 70 yards in week 3, and you're not in love with your bench wide receivers, maybe the easiest pickup for me in the book.
Yeah. I
get to watch a Ute, which I'm going to love to do. But also, I think the guy's going to give you huge minutes.
Yeah,
he had like a couple multi-touchdown games last year.
Yeah,
I don't have his fantasy numbers off the top of my head, but
yeah, I think. Let's see. So last year, he averaged 9.1 points per game.
Tough.
In PPR, he had 2 20-point games. Couple, like 3 or 4 more double-digit ones, but mostly kind of in the like 4 to 6 range.
Okay. Well, maybe I'm stroking him a little hard here, but I think that he's going to be great.
I think that Jerry Jeudy is going to progress. I think Cortland Sutton's going to come back. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think. You
don't think it's there?
I'm probably not going to draft, Tim Patrick or Jerry Jeudy.
That's fair.
Let's see. Fair. One thing I wanted to ask you about. What do you think about the Jacksonville receivers? What do you think about DJ Chark, Marvin Jones,
Chenault.
Laviska?
Yeah.
Marvin Jones is a really interesting addition. Is he better than DJ Chark? Is he going to be their number one option?
I mean, so it's so hard for so many reasons. One being a guy who's never coached in the pros is about to coach in the pros. Mm-hmm. So
rookie quarterback,
a quarterback who's never played in the pros, and like we've just talked about now, maybe a rookie running back, and you've got what I think is a pretty good depth for a rookie quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Like DJ Chark was a very good receiver for them, and Chenault had a pretty good rookie year. He did a lot of like what we saw with Tim Patrick, where it was like, wow, he had 24 points this week, and then went on weeks where he just had 3 points. Marvin Jones is he better than DJ Chark? I don't know. Marvin Jones has been like a career wide receiver 2 wherever he was, where he played next to a guy that was really good. So he might be a guy that you take a waiver on late in the draft, just because you think, hey man, this kid from Clemson is the best quarterback I've ever seen play. There's no way that he doesn't have some production his rookie season. And if that's the logic you're going in, one of those 3 guys is going to hit, and it's probably DJ Chark, but don't be surprised if it's one of the other 2 guys that ends up being, super serviceable. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, looking just at their stats last year, and I know that Marvin Jones had a better quarterback, but Marvin Jones had 11.9 points per game, and DJ Chark had 9.8. Okay. So that, of course, isn't the whole story, but maybe they will be just comparable, like not really, just kind of trading off games,
right? And like, who knows? The Chark thing is so hard because they were so, and the Chenault thing is so hard because they were so bad last year, and the quarterback position was such a mess. I mean, I get the Minshew mania thing, but at the end of the day, the wide receiver room and the quarterback room, especially in the quarterback room in particular, was just such a mess that it was hard to get any idea of what they were going to do. But yeah, I'd take a flyer on DJ Chark or on Marvin Jones late, but I don't think that they're guys that I would be, I'm sitting in the 5th round and I've got 2 good running backs, 2 good wide receivers, and it's my turn to pick, and it's between them or him or Justin Herbert. Just take Herbert, and or just take the quarterback or the tight end that's there, or take the best receiver on the board. Don't say I'm going to get sexy with it and take DJ Chark super early. Like, that's a losing pick to me at that. But at 9, 10 in your draft, like, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I mean, I do think it is interesting because you have essentially 30 serviceable, 25 serviceable, every single game, solid production running backs.
Right.
But when it comes to sure thing wide receivers, wide receiver ones every week, they're really
it gets pretty slim.
14 of them that you can be certain about, 14 to 16.
Right. And even then, because I'd imagine that Mike Evans is a guy that I put in that list, and Mike Evans is not a surefire thing every week. There are weeks where Tom Brady is just I'm not throwing today.
Absolutely.
And Mike Evans doesn't, he doesn't get any catches. And him and Chris Godwin are that way. And they're 2 guys that's their value's always high and their production doesn't always match that like security you feel in having them on your team. Even though they'll end the season with 1,000 yards, even though they're going to end the season with 8 touchdowns, they'll lose you a game because the scheme just doesn't fit. Speaking of value wide receivers, where do you stand on Michael Thomas?
I think he's going to be a solid, like I put him in that 14 to 16, like solid receivers. I think that he is, just because of the injuries last year, and that even when he wasn't injured, his production was really low. And the new quarterback, I mean, I don't want to take him. I'm really hoping that someone else does so I don't have to. But if he's there in one of those rounds and like that, like 14 to 16 wide receiver group is thinning out, then I would definitely take him. And I think that,
I feel the same way about it. I was talking to Riley, who's a big fantasy guy too, and he essentially said, "Hey, look, Jameis Winston made Mike Evans and Chris Godwin a thing because Jameis Winston is wildly inconsistent. So who am I to not take Michael Thomas, who with Drew Brees had huge numbers and with this total wild card at quarterback could have even bigger numbers?" So I can see that.
Okay, so one thing I'm wondering is just at each of these like major positions, who are some of the people that you think are like either sleeper candidates to be like at the very top of the list next year, to just have super high production. Even they might be valued high already, but that they're really going to progress this season, or sleeper picks who you think no one's talking about, no one cares about, that are going to be really solid. Starting with wide receivers. Okay. I kind of was hoping that you'd start there just because I have a couple of guys that I just really like that I've had on my fantasy teams before, that I think their situation got better and this year's going to be big for them. And I will start my list with Terry McLaurin in Washington, because he was awesome last year and they didn't even have a quarterback. And he was awesome the year before and they didn't really have a quarterback. And I know now they have Ryan Fitzpatrick, which is like not having a quarterback, kind of, but it's way better than what they've had. And he's gotten better every year and he's gonna be fucking awesome. And I just think that he's valued at number 10 or like number 11, which is great. I mean, that's a great place to be. And you're obviously gonna be taking him in the top 3 rounds, but I think he's gonna be a guy that it's like, holy fuck, Terry McLaurin has 110 catches, 8 touchdowns and 1,000 yards. This guy's wide receiver 4 in the NFL. How the hell did he drop out of the top 3 rounds? So, and with Curtis Samuel coming to Washington, I mean, I think there's one way to look at it, which is maybe he'll get, fewer targets, but I think that it's just going to take a little less, like a little of the attention off of him.
That's exactly what I think too. I think it's gonna draw the attention away from Scary Terry, and I think it's gonna, and it's also gonna open up a lot more for their playbook. Where you're gonna, the key to a guy like McLaurin is, if you're lining him up in the slot, is like, how many times a game can we get this guy to line up with a linebacker? And Samuel's the perfect guy to put in motion to fuck a team up to get him open. I think we saw it a billion times. He was in Carolina, right? Where he's doing all this cute shit in the backfield, and then the next thing you know, Robbie Anderson's wide open. And all of a sudden, Robbie Anderson's a superstar, but it's all because Curtis Samuel's doing all these little things. So, I'm big on him. At wide receiver. Do you have a guy?
My top one, the one I want more than maybe anyone else, is AJ Brown.
Yeah.
Like, getting rid of Corey Davis. You get rid of Corey Davis. Like, what other receivers do they have? Like, Their depth chart is
No one,
literally,
man.
it's AJ Brown, then Josh Reynolds, then Cameron Batson. Like, what? And like
What?
Ryan Tannehill.
I think they did draft a wide receiver, maybe, but it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter because AJ Brown is a specimen and has done nothing but prove people that he should be valued way higher than he's valued.
Absolutely.
At all times.
Yeah. I love AJ Brown. I feel like there are like only 3 or 4 receivers that I would draft above him.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Another one,
I agree with that.
which is funny because we were just trashing him and you were saying how much you hate him. Someone who I think has just slipped a ton, and it doesn't really make sense, is Adam Thielen. Like, yes, his production is going to go down, and his upside came entirely from touchdowns. And, you know, he had way more touchdowns than he's like ever had in a season before. And so that's going to go down. But that doesn't mean that he's not like a top 20 wide receiver next year.
Sure. I think the Thielen thing, the frustration for me from the Thielen thing is like, this guy just can't produce on his own. And if something happens to Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen immediately becomes this guy that everyone's like, wide receiver 1, gonna be the guy. And for me, 1, you have Kirk Cousins who doesn't do big things. 2, he just doesn't he hasn't proven to me that he's like, I get open by myself.
Mm-hmm.
He's had Steph Diggs or Justin Jefferson to the outside of him every year. And I don't care what you say, that's a huge benefit. Mm-hmm. And when it's just him out there, like when Diggs wasn't playing, Thielen was underwhelming.
Yeah.
Really good at beating corner 2 on another team.
Yes. And I think he's going to be doing that a lot next year. And I think that
a lot.
He is really going to outpace his like average draft position. Okay, some other receivers that I like that I think could be interesting. If Deshaun Watson does not get suspended, which it looks like he's gonna, I think Brandon Cooks could be a really good option.
I think Brandon Cooks could be a good option, period, because what else is going on there?
Yeah, they drafted a kid named Nico Collins, who people really like.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of stuff about him recently. But, you know, he had really good performance, and I know that people think that he's, like, notoriously inconsistent, but having Will Fuller gone could help with that.
Sure.
Help with some consistency.
Sure. How do you feel about anything in Carolina outside of Christian McCaffrey? Just out of curiosity. Because Robbie Anderson's a guy who was good. I don't know what's going to happen there.
Yeah. I mean, I still like Robbie Anderson. I really like DJ Moore.
Yeah, I do too. I really like DJ Moore. And he's one of those guys that I felt like, hey, man, if things work out there, don't be surprised to see DJ Moore in like a top 10 receiver position. Mm-hmm. That's a situational thing, though. I mean, if Sam Darnold's bad, he's bad. And like, you just got to throw in the towel.
I think he's going to be solid.
If you think that, then you have to take more, right?
Mm-hmm. I also think that that now they drafted Chuba Hubbard out of Oklahoma State. He could be a solid handcuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Chuba Hubbard's like a good player.
Yeah.
And he has one off season in college. I wouldn't even call it an off season. He just doesn't produce the level people expect. And now he goes 3rd round and he's behind Christian McCaffrey, which makes his life so much easier. But I think I think they're going to say, hey, let's give the ball to Hubbard a couple more times than we were giving the ball to our other running backs. Because McCaffrey's usage rate was insane.
Yeah.
And then obviously it sounds like you think Allen Robinson's going to be one of these receivers, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Who's just going to explode.
I think he's going to kill it. I think he's going to be great. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to do better than people think. I think Amari Rodgers to the Packers, their new rookie.
Yeah, just the problem with the Packer, like, you know, Rodgers hasn't had a second guy to go to since I think, you know, he was a Packer. He's just never had like that full wide receiver room. Mm-hmm. And every year I'm like, well, this is the guy, right? You know, that I'm going to convince myself is going to be the good second receiver in Green Bay. And it just turns out that having Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams is enough.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. Am I wrong about that? Who is their second? Who is that guy that everybody was? Marquez Valdez-Scantling didn't do anything.
Yeah, they had 2 that they would kind of They had Alan Lazard and Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Yeah. And obviously maybe those two guys just aren't that talented.
Yeah.
And maybe this kid is that talented. When did they take him?
3rd round. So I feel like that kind of like draft position seems like maybe they're buying into him to some extent. I don't know where.
Maybe good things.
Valdez-Scantling or what's his name? Alan Lazard. I don't know where they were drafted.
Yeah.
Or when, but
yeah.
Could be a sign of commitment.
Okay, so you want to do this for do this for running backs now?
Yes, actually,
I think I got a guy.
One more quick one.
Yeah.
With wide receivers, this just could be really interesting. I think that some of the Jets wide receivers could be really interesting. No, I think that we'll see how
the Jets are worth addressing just because Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
I mean, like what the fuck?
Yeah, but I think Corey Davis and Elijah Moore, they could both emerge as like solid flex or even maybe like wide receiver 2.
I mean, I lean more towards the Corey Davis in that argument than anything.
I love Elijah Moore because I forget where AJ Brown went to college, but they went to the same school, and so Elijah Moore lived with AJ Brown for the last like couple months.
Oh wow.
And they would just like practice together. And I saw some like tearful video from AJ Brown where AJ Brown kept being like telling Elijah Moore, like, you're better than me. You are a better wide receiver than I am. And, you never know how true that is. But that for me, I was like, Elijah Moore to the moon.
And okay. I like it. For running backs, that I think I have 2 guys here. And I'm just basing this sort of off of this list that I have. And, maybe we get to draft day and people are going to be like, no, their value is way higher than what ESPN had them at, pre-August. But Jonathan Taylor is one guy who, I think he sits probably around like running back 5 through 8 for people. Mm-hmm. And there's just huge potential for this guy to just be running back 1, maybe.
Absolutely.
I mean, especially in a PPR league, just the sheer amount of like, I think safety that they're going to put around rebuilding Carson Wentz confidence. Mm-hmm. That's going to come from like consistent handoff to Jonathan Taylor, where he's going to have big yards on the first down carry, which Wentz hasn't seen in 3 years because the Eagles O-line has been so bad. Mm-hmm. And then little dump offs to him to get 3 or 4 yards. I mean, those kinds of things that they're going to do to try to secure his confidence all over again are going to be the kinds of things that I think lead down this road where you have Jonathan Taylor in the top 3 running backs.
Absolutely. And I think that, I would certainly take Jonathan Taylor over Saquon Barkley next year. I think that, like, if you really look at Saquon Barkley's production, he had that one season where he just went insane. But then the season after, I know that he had, some injury issues, but still he was 10th among running backs in points. And he was like 9th in like points per game. And then last season, like even when he was in, he was not having any like big plays. And I know that was a rarity. He played like 2 games last season.
Right.
But still, I don't see a reason to think that, he really is like the second best running back.
That's also a reason just to take another guy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, my problem with Saquon is the guy's a freak. He is absolutely, like, if he stays healthy, he's a freak and anything can happen there. But the big if is there, and that's the healthy thing. Mm-hmm. And at some point, you're staring down the barrel of the gun and it's like, well, I've got Jonathan Taylor here. I'm drafting 3rd in the draft. Before me have gone Kamara and McCaffrey, or I'm 4th and Henry. And now I have Saquon, and it's like, do I really want to take Saquon Barkley? Mm-hmm. Like, no, you know what? I'm probably just going to play this one safe, and I'm going to take, literally anyone else. Jonathan Taylor,
seriously,
Dalvin Cook. I mean, just like... And
any of those like first round running backs.
Right. He would be at the very bottom of my first round running back take. I'd take,
absolutely,
at some point, maybe even a receiver over him. Like,
I would for sure take Devontae Adams over him.
Right. So like Barkley's value to me is really weird, and I know it gets away from what we were talking about, but that's the first guy, and then I only have two prepared for you, and then the second guy's Aaron Jones, where it's like, hey, every year this guy's a top 3 running back, and yet every year he slips in the running back rankings and somehow is going in the second round. What's going on here?
I think he'll be a great one.
I think he'll be great. Yeah. Especially now that Jamal Williams is gone, like we talked about earlier. So those are my 2 running backs that I'm like super high on. And then J.K. Dobbins is down there. We talked about him earlier. I didn't want to beat the dead horse, but I'm super high on Dobbins.
Yeah. Okay, a few that I have. Love Austin Eckler. Think he's going to be great. I think Miles Sanders is going to be a really, really solid running back. Not necessarily some like top 10 one or anything. I think that Derrick Henry, I mean, no one, like everyone knows about Derrick Henry, but still it seems like in a lot of drafts that I see, like he goes like 4th or 5th off the board.
Right. And that's a year after year thing that is so dumb. I was thinking about this earlier today, and my initial thought was, man, what's with the Kamara hype? Anytime that there's a guy like if you put a gun to my head and you're like Kamara or Derrick Henry, I'm like Derrick Henry every single down on a football field.
Absolutely.
Every time. And I know that Kamara had like that insane stretch of games where he, scored a touchdown or 2 touchdowns in a game or whatever. And that's great. But Derrick Henry's getting 2,000 yards a season, and it doesn't even look like he's trying. And they lost weapons in Tennessee. They didn't gain them. We've been talking this whole time about how Tennessee's losing weapons. It's not like Ryan Tannehill's a standout quarterback. This guy's going to get so many carries. It's going to be the highest end production on carries in the league. So
yeah.
No, I agree. How's that guy not number 1 consensus? I know Christian McCaffrey's insane, but
yeah, I think I would take Christian McCaffrey over.
I do too. I mean, I would too, but
Derrick Henry.
But there's a small, number 2, Derrick Henry for me. I like Dalvin Cook. Yeah, he gets hurt, and Saquon gets hurt, and Alvin Kamara's just looks like an injury waiting to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and his usage could go up. I think he for sure is the second running back.
Yeah. How do you feel about Zeke?
And then, I mean, I know I just think with Dak coming back, I think that Dak I think he could be the top quarterback next year.
Okay.
And I think with him coming back, I think that Elliott's his production is going to be really, really stable.
Okay. Because it was so inconsistent last year. I tend to shy away from guys like Ezekiel Elliott, where I can get, maybe a Jonathan Taylor or, a Nick Chubb. And Nick Chubb's a guy for me too. Nick Chubb's fucking insane, and I know that they do the dual running back thing there, and that scares a lot of people. But Nick Chubb was so good for me in fantasy last year. Even I kept him through the injury. Yeah,
he's crazy, and he's gonna just be incredible next year. I also think that in that kind of high end range, Joe Mixon. I know that he's been really inconsistent in the past. I drafted him, and he was injured. But still, like, he was getting a lot more consistent production. And the Bengals coach recently said that they want to use Joe Mixon as an every down back.
And Gio Bernard's not there anymore, right?
Gio Bernard's gone. They just got Samaje Perine, I think.
Yeah, that's the Florida kid?
I don't know. They didn't pick one up. Like, Samaje Perine was there at the end of the year last year. Okay. They started using him as the backup instead of Gio.
Okay.
But he started to get really consistent. And I think that, like, with Joe Burrow on the team, and just kind of the evidence from last year, it seems like Joe Mixon's production is going to be a lot more consistent.
Man, I was coming in here hoping that you would talk me off the Joe Mixon ledge, and now you've just put me right back on the Mixon bus, dude.
I like him. I could see him being
I'm fucking going to take him in the third round, man.
Running back.
Oh, man.
You should.
Oh, man.
I think that I don't see why Myles Gaskins, why he is falling so much. I mean, like,
yeah, that makes no sense.
Jalen Waddle, but it just makes no sense to me. Like, he won so many people their, like, fantasy playoffs.
Oh yeah, And that's a team that's going to be competing late in the season, right? So when you're looking at it and you're like, okay, well, I got to get huge value here, and I also need a guy that I can play in the playoffs for my fantasy team that's not going to be sitting because the team is 11 and or 16-1. Oh, I'm going to be playing. Guess who I'm going to be playing? I'm playing Myles Gaskin, who was a beast last year. You're right. Where is the value dropping on him? Antonio Gibson's the same way on Washington.
Yeah, and I think he'll regress a little bit. I think he won't have as many touchdowns this year as he did last year, and that's kind of where his value came from.
That's fair.
So I do think that he should slip a little bit, but I think that he's a really good like RB2.
Yeah, like a really good RB2 option.
And yeah, I think Myles Gaskin is going to slip a lot, and you could take him in like the 7th or 8th rounds, and he would be a great ad. He and Mike Davis are...
Right. Mike Davis.
They're going to be solid.
They're going to be solid.
Yeah.
All right, do you have a quarterback or quarterbacks for this section? Oh, you can kick it off this time. I want to see where you go here.
Yeah, so I really like what's his name? Dak Prescott.
Yeah, you've been all over him.
He at the beginning of last season, first of all, he is just such a consistent like high performer. He's like always like a top 5 fantasy quarterback. And like
right.
He's been just extraordinary for so long. And last season, he was like ridiculous at the beginning of the season.
He was insane at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, insane.
He had...
And I mean, I get part of that was that they couldn't defend a cone, but he was insane. It sucks that our Josh Allen secret is out.
Yeah, that blows. But with Dak Prescott having like 28 points per game in the 5 games that he played last season... That's ridiculous. Yeah. That's like that's far insane. And away higher than the rest of them. And people are still going to draft like Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, maybe even like Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert. Like I could see all of those guys getting drafted over him. And I think that's dumb.
I think that's super dumb. Super dumb. I think quarterback's really hard to be like, this guy's going to be top 5 because at the end of the day, it is the position that we know the most about. Right? Like, going into the season, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson. These guys are going to put up numbers. Aaron Rodgers, right?
Yeah.
But when I'm looking at quarterback, you're going, okay, well, if I'm one of these guys who's just saying, yeah, but you know what? After those 5 guys, the value's all the same. The guy that I think might poke his head into those top 5, top 10 with kind of insane numbers based on whether the offense really fits him is Matthew Stafford, who you could get super late, who's on nobody's list. But if he ends up fitting into that offense in Los Angeles,
yeah,
I think it's going to be a parade of touchdowns. I mean, like Jared Goff, who has not a very good arm and in my opinion is just not that good of a quarterback. He's not bad. He's just not that good. He's not as good as Stafford. Had a near MVP season with that team. So if Stafford can be productive and just take a little bit of his former self and play well this season for them, he could be a really good fantasy guy.
Absolutely.
I mean, a really good guy.
I was saying this to you earlier, but I think he's going to have a season that's really comparable to Ryan Tannehill's last season, where he is a solid start. He's not like the absolute top quarterback or anything like that, but you're not losing games because of him.
Right. In the style, stylistically, they're two totally different guys, but I think that I think that's a very good numbers comparison where it's like, yeah, you know what? Ryan Tannehill, you probably took him at the very last opportunity to take a quarterback, and you probably were a little nervous about it, but at the end of the day, I think the guy ends up at like top 10 quarterback in fantasy. You're not winning weeks, but you're not losing weeks because of him. He's a control piece for you. And I think a lot of fantasy is diminishing gaps between talent and extending gaps between talent. So if you're not great at quarterback, but you can guarantee that this guy's not going to lose the position by 15 points, then you're okay, right? Because you can't guarantee that with Ryan Fitzpatrick, where, you know what, Fitzpatrick might lose this week to Patrick Mahomes because I'm matched up against him in fantasy by 35 points, and there's no way I can gain that. And I think that that's like maybe the most crucial part of winning fantasy leagues is going, where can I diminish talent gaps? and where can I get guys that it's like, yeah, you know what? They're not exploding. I have a few guys who explode, but at the rest of the positions, I'm really locked in at diminished gaps in talent.
Yeah.
So
I know at this pick that I'm losing this top quarterback. Like I'm losing Josh Allen because someone's going to pick him in the next, before it snakes back to me. But if I do that, I can still pick up Justin Herbert 3 rounds later and pick up a solid RB2 instead.
Right. And now I'm picking Najee Harris. And I know for a fact that even if Najee Harris is lined up with one of these guys in my league who has, for some reason, Dalvin Cook and Jonathan Taylor, he's not going to lose the battle to one of those two guys by 35 points. And I'm not going to lose that week because of my running back position. I might lose it somewhere else on the board, but you want to guarantee that you're keeping games close by talent evaluation. So
also,
I mean, it's tough.
Part of me has a weird premonition, and I just think that Alvin Kamara is going to get injured next year, and I'm gonna take.
I just think that is the truth.
Think it's going to happen. I don't know why, but I somewhere in my soul,
I have on my list for the light blue highlight. It says overrated/injury.
Yep.
And I have highlighted Alvin Kamara, number one guy that I think is going to get hurt next year, and it comes from I think a discussion that I've had with you before. But if a guy is a consensus number one overall running back pick for multiple years in a row, don't take him.
Yeah.
Do not take him because he's going to get hurt. Saquon got hurt. Christian McCaffrey got hurt. And I think this year it's going to be Alvin Kamara. I just think that that's the way it's going to work out. And if you are a running back in the league, you're bound to get hurt because it's such a physical position. And with the usage that they put into Kamara, there's just no way that he stays healthy for another year.
Yep.
No, I'm right there on the train. Do you have any tight ends that you like? I don't think that there's enough talent at the tight end position to be like, oh, here's a sneaky guy who's going to land in the top 5. But
I mean, I think
anybody at tight end that you just are.
I think
always going for
because they lost so much in terms of receivers. I think T.J. Hawkinson, his value is going way up. I think he's for me, the number 4. I think Jared Cook is really interesting on the Chargers.
Yeah.
I think he'll be a really interesting.
I think Jonnu Smith's super interesting.
In
New England.
Can't trust them. They have not shown any consistency in their passing game.
Yeah.
And and the fact that you have Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, I could see Jonnu Smith having some really outstanding games, but I don't think that he's going to be a super reliable.
How do you feel about Logan Thomas in Washington?
I like him.
Anything you looked at there? I like him, but I think the thing with tight ends is okay, we're out of the top 3 where you have Waller, Kittle, and Kelsey, and maybe Kyle Pitts is a freak, but
I think
What's the difference between Gesicki and T.J. Hawkinson? Probably pretty minimal.
Yeah, but I was also going to say I think that there is sort of a next tier, of people who you could really take, Kittle, Kelsey, Waller.
Right.
Then you got, I think, T.J. Hawkinson, Noah Fant, Kyle Pitts, Jared Cook, Irv Smith, people love. I also think Mike Gesicki, it seems like Tua loves him. When Tua took over at quarterback, that was when Mike Gesicki went from
that was his guy.
1.5 fantasy points per game to 10 or 11. And he was a really solid, he was a great tight end at the end of the season.
No, I totally agree. I think that that kind of thing is where you're getting value. And then if I don't think there's anything wrong with being you know what? I don't think tight end's really all that important. And we've gotten down the line here and Austin Hooper's good for me. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I obviously now you're not winning games at the tight end position and you're never going to because Hooper's never going to get you 30 points. But hey, if you like Austin Hooper and you think that you said, okay, well, I've skipped out on taking a tight end 4 times in a row now, but I've got a lot of talent out of those skips, then you're fine.
Yeah, I think I could see Kyle Pitts going at going way too early or way too late. But I would love to have Kyle Pitts because I know that most people think of him as sort of a dynasty tight end who's going to have probably an okay season next year and then just, skyrocket after that. But he
Right.
could have, like
A big
no
year.
one cared about Darren Waller like 2 years ago.
And I think this is like a Josh Allen for you pick last year for me, but I just want to watch Kyle Pitts play.
I think it's really fun.
I think it's a fun pick. Like Atlanta's a disaster kind of, and they're just going to throw the ball a whole bunch. Like, I want to watch that.
Yeah.
And if it means that I get to watch this rookie tight end line up on the outside and go up and beat a corner, like, yeah, I want to fucking watch that.
Yeah,
that sounds fun to me.
They didn't draft a running back. Like, maybe they're just kind of committing
they're just gonna ride it out,
just passing like an air raid offense.
Right. I mean, so all that being said, you brought up something interesting with New England. Are there teams that you just like say, I'm not drafting guys from that team? Because there's a list of teams that I do that for every year. And it's like, I don't care. I'm not picking from them. And where does that start for you?
Refuse to. New England.
Yeah.
And then Baltimore, other than J.K. Dobbins and Lamar Jackson.
Right.
Tampa Bay, I would love to stay away from them because I don't know what the fuck
I just don't know what's going to fucking happen every year.
I mean, yeah, I think Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, they're going to be like good pickups, but
at the same time, I pray someone takes them away from me because I don't want to have to make the decision of playing one of those two guys.
I totally agree. And then the Jets, it's either the I don't know. I think like we said, Corey Davis and Elijah Moore, I could see them having good seasons. And I could also see their running back, Michael Carter from UNC.
I like Michael Carter from UNC.
Season.
But they're a stay away from me simply for the purpose of like, they've never had their shit together. And I just don't want to have to be like sitting there and being like, oh my God, I've got to start this guy from the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
I just hate that idea. Houston's on that list for me. I won't play anyone from Houston. I won't draft them, especially with like the Deshaun Watson questions. And obviously we're going to get clarity down the road on his suspension and what's going to happen with him. But like, I don't care if I think Brandon Cooks is going to be great, and I can think that in my mind, and he can be, but I think that I'll be okay if I skip Brandon Cooks.
I think if it looks like for God knows what reason, Deshaun Watson is not going to get suspended.
Roger Goodell is the commissioner.
Yeah.
So it's possible.
Fair. But I do think if he is in, then I like Brandon Cooks, and I would not be surprised if I really liked Nico Collins as like a waiver wire pickup later in the season.
Gotcha. But drafting wise, I just don't think I can go there. Could just be me. I don't think I can go Houston. Traditionally, that was also like an Arizona thing for me, but obviously I'd take D-Hop. The Raiders are a classic one for me. Outside of Josh Jacobs, I'm not touching anyone there.
I'm not touching Josh Jacobs.
Really?
Yeah, because they got Kenyon Drake. What are they doing? Like, I
just don't know. Like, Josh Jacobs is so good. Like, and what did Kenyon Drake do last year where I'm like, yeah, you know what? He's stealing all the carries.
I know, but then why would they, like, if they didn't want a running back who was good enough to take like a solid proportion of carries,
sure,
why would they go out and pay so much money to take another team's like RB1? It doesn't make sense.
I don't know, other than maybe they think like load management to some extent because they want to get more out of this kid, but like,
yeah, maybe they just want a really good like running back too. But I
mean, John Gruden's mentally ill, so I don't try to think too much about anything he does.
Yeah.
But like,
dumb decisions. But yeah, I would love to have Darren Waller.
I'd love to have Darren Waller, and I would love for them to have a quarterback because I think that Henry Ruggs could be really good.
Yeah, and then another team that I'm staying away from is Denver.
Oh yeah. Denver's impossible.
I don't think I'm going to pick any of them. I don't even really want to pick Cortland Sutton, even though a lot of people think he's going to have a great season next year.
Or Noah Fant.
I could maybe pick him if like all the other, okay tight ends are gone. But, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. But I think, Javonte Williams could be a pick who I think that he's going to start out with super low production. And I think throughout the season, he's going to take over. So maybe he could be a good, like, you wait for someone else to draft him in the 9th round and then drop him in week 3, and then you pick him up week 7, and then you win your league. Yeah.
I think, see, I can get down with that. They're a team that's hard to draft on, period. Just
absolutely.
Philadelphia's on my list this year. I'm not taking anyone from Philadelphia. Not until like there's something that happens with Jalen Hurts, but like everything I saw last year is just telling me like don't. Even Miles Sanders, I know he had a couple, like Booby had a couple good weeks, but that team is just, it's scary.
I don't know. I disagree. I really like Jalen Hurts, and I think Miles Sanders and Devontae Smith are going to be viable.
You think so?
Plays. Yeah.
I hope you're right, just because the world's better when Philadelphia is good at football. But I mean, it's not, but it is at the same time, because I love hating on their fans.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't. I just can't do it yet.
Yeah.
What about the Giants? Would you take any of their receivers? Because I think I'd take Kenny Golladay.
Yeah, and I could definitely see I could see Kadarius Toney emerging as a good receiver throughout the season.
Yeah, I think they if they're not good this year on offense, I know whose fault it is.
Yeah.
And it's Daniel Jones's, right? So it's like, I think even a mediocre quarterback should have success in that offense. There's just too much talent.
I also think, I don't know, I love Devontae Booker as a handcuff.
Got a back to pack and the U.
Uh-huh.
I love Devontae Booker. I mean, and how do you feel about Zach Moss as a handcuff?
I don't even think he's going to be a handcuff. I think he's going to take over Devin Singletary. Like, I think, we'll see, and I don't know how reliant the Bills are going to be on their run game. And so I think they're like, late picks who you hope you don't have to play, but you probably do because someone's going to get injured. But I think that Zach Moss could also definitely be a viable fantasy running back.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I had Zach Moss on my team for the majority of the year last year until he got hurt. And it was just kind of fun to watch the numbers as they go up and down. But he's a red zone guy. Mm-hmm. He's gonna be a red zone guy for them. And he's got soft hands. He's got pretty good hands. So I could definitely see him really starting to take the load from Singletary. I know that a lot of people talked about them going running back, and the fact that they didn't go running back at all in the draft points to me that they have faith in Moss, which I really like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, 2 quick final things. Defense.
Yeah, let's do it.
Defense.
Yeah.
What do you think?
See, defense for me is so hard because it's like there's always questions, but I think you can't go wrong picking Pittsburgh, picking Cleveland.
I think the Rams. I think the Rams are going to be great.
Picking the Rams.
And I think
any team that's going to create turnovers, right? I mean,
yes. I think the 49ers are going to come back in a huge way.
Yeah.
And I think Miami is a great pickup. And I think they're going to have some crazy special teams touchdowns. I don't know if Jalen Waddle is going to be their kick returner, but if he were, then I would love their
special teams opportunities there. Yeah. No, I mean, Miami's going to be the most overlooked team to have a good defense because they've got a really good defensive head coach in Brian Flores, and they were doing very good things there and have been doing good things. Mm-hmm. To continue to build the defense, I think they're going to be great. I think Buffalo's a great option. Any team that has a pretty good defense to a great, teetering on great defense with an offense that can just explode is a team you want to take, because once you can take the gas out of another team, you start getting a lot of interceptions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Okay, then kicker, my favorite position to just get way into research each week on.
Into numbers.
Yeah. I love streaming kickers. That's my favorite. I think that Younghoe Koo is gonna just eat shit, because I think that fans are gonna be coming back to the stadium. And when he was a kicker before, when they had fans in the stadium, he was awful. He got cut from the team.
He was dog water.
Absolutely.
That's a really interesting observation. How do we look at the kickers' numbers compared to when there were and weren't people in the stadium?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Because obviously Justin Tucker is a lock every year as like the best kicker or whatever because he doesn't miss kicks. But like, I mean, I don't put too much thought into it. I like Rodrigo Blankenship.
Me too.
As a guy that like I like to stream. But I stream my kickers and sometimes I stream my defense until I can kind of like find one where I'm like, oh, this is sneaky good. I'll stream them for like the first 3 weeks and then I usually land on one that's consistent. But yeah, kicker's interesting, man.
I say I like veterans and I like Jason Sanders and Daniel Carlson.
Yeah, I'm going to really like guys who have kicked in front of crowds before.
Mm-hmm. It's a big
That's a really
thing.
good observation.
Yeah.
It's a big thing.
Younghoe Koo's going down.
When Younghoe Koo misses his first 3 kicks in front of a crowd, are you going to have a tweet about it? Do you have something loaded in the chamber to shit on Younghoe Koo?
No, but I'm going to write 3 drafts and then not post any of them.
And put them into your endless box of Twitter drafts?
Absolutely. That's the plan.
That's the plan.
For the 3 people who are still here, thank you so much.
For anyone who's still listening, Zach, what's your Twitter handle?
At Zach Boyge.
And you probably already follow him because it's probably like Noah Pack who's still listening at this point.
Yeah, well, that's very kind of you. Thanks, Noah Pack.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Cool. It's a wrap. Thank you, Zach.
All right. Thank you.